tonight I'd really just like to take a half an hour to share some free-roaming ideas. To me, war really is the extreme example of the failure of empathy. The Holocaust was probably the world's most dramatic example of the absence of empathy. But some of those stories that we're hearing now, to me, are more critical because we've gone to the moon, we've plumbed the depths of the ocean. Technology has spanned all of the things that we had in mind, but we've yet begun to explore the depths of the human heart. We have yet to begin to find, how do we connect to one another? We have yet to realize the power in little children. We've had the civil rights movements in the 60s, the women's rights movement in the 70s, gay rights movements in the 80s. We've had many movements, but I do believe that the time has come to consider children's rights. And I did some work with the World Health Organization, and actually since '99 on and off, we've bumped up against one another in constructive ways. And the last introduction with them was looking at what are the trajectories for healthy outcomes. How does early childhood connect to those trajectories for good outcomes? And as Victor spoke about neuroscience, the avalanche of neuroscience, obviously we're aware that children's brains come only 25% fried, and the rest of the cooking happens in real time in the universe of their experiences. But in thinking about the impact that childhood can have, not just on the children, but on the developmental health and wealth of nations. Really, the moral future of our universe rests on the breath of the little children. And what we hope and what we expect and what we invest in has everything to do with what we get. And I think it would be splendid if we thought about a revolution of little children. It's not good enough to look at children as social capital in the making. Children are children and have value and contribution in the moment, not just in the making. And you see these investment strategies for university education, and all those things are brilliant and should happen. But the best investment we make in our children is how we treat them on a moment-to-moment basis, because we can live in the future, but for the child, they can't wait. Today is their moment. And it's up to us to find ways to meet that moment, not to be putting them off indefinitely. Because what happens for the child in the moment is that they are developing their capacities to understand, to care, to share. They are developing their ability to figure out who they are. They are looking at what impact can they have in the world. And it's amazing to think how very early they are capable of entertaining these very elegant thoughts. In Seeds of Empathy, which is the younger sibling of Roots of Empathy, we work with 3 to 5-year-old children in childcare settings. And we piloted that program in British Columbia, not by accident, but because we have such good leadership here at every level. Lynn referenced the school board here in Vancouver. Absolutely exceptional leadership in social emotional learning and in basically looking after the education of the person. Not after math education, not after literacy education, but of the education of the citizenry. Their pillars, their values speak to that. So my sense is we really only measure what we treasure. And it's difficult to be sometimes the lone guy who's saying, well, yes, we're very interested in the math scores, and yes, We're doing our very best to improve our teaching, because it's not about improving our children. There's nothing wrong with the children. It's about improving how we help them to learn. It's about finding ways, not making the child ready for school, but making the school ready for the child. About helping the community to support the family, because the level of support that a child has before they come to school has more to do with their success, their social emotional competence. Actually, if you look at grade 3 children, their level of social emotional competence is a better indicator of their grade 8 success than is their math or reading score. But if you take that back to the early childhood, we know that the plasticity of the brain in those early years makes every moment valuable. And that's not to say stimulate the children. That is to say notice the children. That is to say play with the children. That is to say listen to the children. Love the children. It's not about artificially buying the flashcards and the wind-up battery toys. We should bury them. It's about finding the face-to-face relationships. It's about looking at how much screen time are 3-year-olds getting and how much relationship time. And not turning the relationship time into instruction. What color is it? How many legs does it have? What sound does it make? If you don't know those answers, you have no business asking a child. And they're equally insulted if you ask them what color it is when you know what color it is. So this whole approach to Seeds of Empathy in childcare centres is really about respecting the child for who they are at that moment in time and giving them what they need, not what they want. As a parent, it's always a tough decision what to give your child. Do you give them what they ask for? Sometimes they're smart enough to ask for what they need rather than what they want. But it's about making those decisions. So in Seeds of Empathy, we piloted the program here. And 50% of that pilot was in Aboriginal centres. Because in BC, you lead the world, well, at least you lead Canada, I'd say you lead in North America, in how you have decided to work with your Indigenous peoples. That you have legislated change as well as lived change. And we're very happy to be a part of that, because the communities right across this wonderful province, the Aboriginal communities have invited Roots of Empathy and Seeds of Empathy. And as Victor will tell you, we don't spend 5 cents on marketing or advertising. Our drumbeat is the people who see the program, who hear about it from their children, or the classroom teachers who host it, or the instructors who decide I've got a new mission in life, or any of the people who have anything to do with it. They are our spokespeople. And fortunately, educators do a lot of talking with one another, so we haven't had a problem. But Seeds of Empathy taught us all kinds of new things about community development, about little children's capacity of 3 years of age to think about, who am I? Because that is the question we all must ask ourselves. Because you don't know who you are, you don't know where you are or where you want to go. Programs bring an infant and a parent from the community into the classroom or into the childcare centre over the whole year. And basically we roll out a blanket, the children sit around that blanket, and they are coached in observing that baby, what that baby's trying to do, what that baby is thinking, for those at the university, theory of mind, what that baby's intentions are, what that baby's temperament is, how is that baby facing the world. And it's a springboard for the Seeds or the Roots instructor to bring those learnings to label the baby's feelings of frustration or excitement, so that you can have conversations with the children that go like this. When was a time that you felt frustrated like our baby? Or when was a time that you felt like our baby feels when he has to go to bed all alone upstairs and he probably thinks everyone is downstairs partying? When have you felt lonely? Who do you speak to when you're lonely? Do you know that we all get lonely? I can tell you there is a pandemic of loneliness amongst children. And I don't think people realize that because we have so many things. Well, the things ain't people, folks. And a wind-up toy or a screen does not connect to another, bless you, to another person. And little children need to belong, not to a screen. They need to belong to people. So it's really interesting in this discussion of who am I. 3 and 4-year-olds will tell you, I am my mommy's best girl. Or they will tell you, I empty the dishwasher, I'm a very big helper. They are full of pride and love. They know exactly who they are. And the further away you get from 3, the harder it is to know. So the children in grade 7 who we work with in Roots of Empathy, in the Who Am I theme, we give them different ways to talk about who they are. And I brought a few ways in one of the activities, because in Roots of Empathy and Seeds of Empathy, the program goes all year. The little baby and the parent visit over the whole school year 9 or 10 times. But there are lessons all the time, before and after, lessons of prediction and lessons of reflection. So here's a little one who's made her picture of who she is, who am I, and we asked them to use media, print media, to say who they are. So this little girl has said she's Scottish, she's super, she's bright, she's a friend, she's special, she's happy, she chatters, she's used the word mighty and lucky, she's used the word Canada, she's used the word listen. She realizes, we do so much talking and not nearly enough listening. So this little girl, now she was very clear about who she was. And here's another little person, male or female. So this little person, Jasjit, is also Canadian twice. And cool, royal, and a fan of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. So here's, and these are kids in Vancouver. Here's another little girl, who am I? And she's got elegant, fun, comfortable. She's got family in there. Sometimes you see these big kids and you don't realize how very little they are. We used to think in Victorian times that little children were just small adults. We didn't understand that they actually have different cognitive processes and capacities to think and to conceptualize and understand things. Yes, all the same feelings. Of course, they weren't given the rights to their feelings. They even dressed children in these incredible, uncomfortable clothes. Now, we realize that children are not small adults, but we haven't realized that adults are big children. And we've got to hold on to our child's heart. Because children have pure hearts. Children have incisive emotional intelligence in that they know exactly what's real and what's fraudulent. You cannot tell a child, I'm not mad with you, I'm just mad with what you did. They can see right through you. We learn these phrases to control ourselves. But Mom, your eyes are mad with me. Because one of the things we do in Roots of Empathy is we coach children to observe the baby's cues, to read their face, to read their body cues, so that they can understand, but dangerous tool because then they use it on you. So they'll tell the teacher exactly what's going on, what she's feeling or he's feeling that day. Don't try and confuse them. So this little girl has had spirited, sweet. But look at the word she's put in there. Can you see that word right in the middle? She's put alone. Now that opens up a wonderful conversation for the classroom teacher who has the opportunity to watch the children be superb. Poor old classroom teachers don't get a break coming or going. The job just gets more and more difficult and complex. But to be able to have somebody else come into your classroom and work with your children while you join them. Imagine the teacher sits around the green blanket with the children and watches them be magnificent. Watches the toughest character in the class give insight into how the baby is feeling and share a time when she or he was vulnerable. Because what happens in both seeds and roots is that when children are connected through their shared feelings, they realize they're not islands. And the most isolated and the biggest bullies in the classroom suddenly are human. I've seen one of the former classroom bullies make an incredible statement. This was a child who said the thing he was most proud of. Now we talk a lot about pride because we're talking about intrinsic pride, not the pride of ribbons and medals and plaques on your wall, but the kind of pride that comes out of doing something altruistically. Nobody needs to know about it. It's not about counting kind deeds according to somebody else. That is so artificial. So this little boy, when we were talking about a time when you felt proud, and you wouldn't imagine how many children can't tell you a time they felt proud. Even though they understand, we're talking about feeling good about yourself. This little boy said, I'm proud that I can now go on the science trip because I don't wet the bed anymore. Now what a heroic thing. What an act of faith and trust in your friends. To be able to be exquisitely vulnerable like that. That the whole culture of the classroom had tipped. That they were supporting one another instead of crucifying one another. That they were really able to work as a team. And you know, if you look at the classroom as a microcosm of society, if we don't learn to cooperate and be kind to one another there, where are we going to learn it? You can learn it at home, but if it doesn't get translated into your lived experience in the world of community and school, it's very difficult. So I'm very proud of the children, and I'm very proud that we have an opportunity to share their insights. I want to tell you a few of the things that Toronto Children have said. In terms of Victor's remarks about the suicides from bullying, that is also an epidemic. And in Ireland, where Victor said, I'm going to Ireland, we're in Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland now under Peace 3 support from the UN, because they see Roots of Empathy as a peace-building program. Here's a little child in kindergarten. The question is, what can Roots of Empathy teach the world? And this little child, not in Vancouver but in BC, said, stop bullying kindergartens. So this is a child of 5 years of age who's already realized it's not fair and is making a protest and now has a vehicle for doing it. And what happens in the classrooms around bullying, it's not that the beleaguered teacher is saying these are the 3 things that are going to happen to you if you bully, or bullying means A, B, C, and D. It's about children realizing inside what's hurtful, what's cruel, what's not fair. And whether you call it bullying or marginalizing or ignoring or whatever you call it, it's not fair. And the research has been amazing in the program. Research that's happened here through the Human Early Learning Development Group, particularly Dr. Kimberly Schoenert-Reichel, but the research has been repeated in many countries, same outcome. With roots of empathy, children decrease in aggression, particularly the type of aggression that's associated with bullying. Also the type of aggressive bullying, physical bullying, but also relationship bullying, because you know what it feels like. So if you decide not to pick up your friend on the way to school anymore because your other new friend doesn't like her, that's excluding and marginalizing someone. And it's not an overt, it's a covert cruelty that is probably more hurtful than, as kids would say, getting your lights punched out every day in the playground, because you don't know what to do with a broken heart. And there is an armada of broken hearts in every classroom. And when you give children voice to how they feel, there is now research that says just naming your feeling reduces the level of cortisol that is associated with the negative feeling. So we are not doing social work. We are not getting into individual situations. We are helping children understand what it is that they might be doing to be helpful to others. Without empathy, there will be no altruism. Without empathy, you cannot get to the first stage of conflict resolution. Without empathy, you cannot be a good parent. You have to be able to get under your baby's skin. You don't always know what's wrong with your baby, but if you don't feel for your baby and with your baby, the baby's at risk. And empathy is something that we just seem to be able to give children the opportunity to see the love between a parent and an infant, and to identify that little baby. And the mirror neurons get going and do their job. I just want to share with you, little girl here, Brianna, said, "I am important." We said, "What is an important thing about you?" And she took it even further. She said, "I am important. I am proud to be myself." Well, when you look at kids who are getting into cars and into trouble because they're trying so desperately to fit in, if you could keep that quality of quiet confidence in children as they grow up, we wouldn't be having near the number of disasters of children who are joining gangs to fit in, or children who are joining bullying groups so that they'll have a way to belong. Roots of Empathy can teach the world no bullying. There's a very righteous group of children out there. This happens more times than people will believe. This little girl wrote this picture, and these pictures are collected and they're shared with the Roots of Empathy parent for the parent to understand. This says, "I was left out when I was at the sleepover party." Now, can you imagine? Here you are, stranded away from your loving family, and they decide to gang up and leave one person out. This does not happen with Roots of Empathy children. And on field trips, schools have told me time and time again, they always make sure there are some Roots graduates in the group, because they will stand up and challenge cruelty where they see it. And in 85% of bullying situations, there are onlookers and bystanders, and they do nothing. But with Roots of Empathy children, they stand up. One of the sweetest examples was a little boy called Ricky, and I told this story to His Holiness, and he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. And aren't the two so closely associated? The story was, it was in the playground, it was early in the year, and this little boy was in grade 1, and his best friend Ricky, and they'd gone out to ride the big grown-up slide, first time. So the friend got up to the top and had a panic attack. A little boy, 6 years old. The ladder was full of hopeful sliders, and he was frozen at the top. And at the bottom of the slide, they were throwing pebbles up. shouting taunts like, you wimp, you coward, come on down, recess is going to be over. So his best friend Ricky, all of 6 years of age, tells the children on the ladder, please come down, I'm going up to help my friend. They all came down backwards, down the ladder. He got up to the top of the ladder. By this time there was an audience. And he put his legs around his friend and he hugged him. He said, we will go down together. And that example of heroism, the child who stood up against the entire schoolyard, nobody told him to do that. He understood in his second month into Roots of Empathy that when somebody is being treated unfairly, you can do something about it. Whether it's in the sandbox or the war box, you can do something about it. So that is the quality of citizenship you can get from a 6-year-old. We don't start growing citizens when they're old enough to vote. Right from the beginning, they are people. They in fact are 100% of our future. And I think we're absolutely well dressed for the future. Now, I'm aware that I've spoken for 30 minutes and I'd love to move to the next stage where I think Brenda and I are going to chat, is it? So I'll leave you to organize.